We've talked about pegasi and nightmares, but there's a third creature that brings this trilogy to its full potential. May I introduce, lean, mean, and certainly not green, this Welcome back to a Compendium of Monsters. It's Narzugon week. Before we continue, stab that subscribe button and dodge that fire lance. Wouldn't want you reborn as a Lemuri, would we? Narzugons are challenge level 13, and crazed destructor teenagers isn't a terrible description. These medium devils have an armor class of 20, average hit points of 112, a speed of 30 feet, and dark vision out to 120 feet. Befitting hellish creatures, Narzugons resist acid damage, cold damage, and damage from non-magical attacks not made with silvered weapons. Narzugons are immune to fire damage, poison damage, and the following conditions: charmed, frightened, and poisoned. I can see that. I wouldn't want to charm that horrifying face either. Narzugons have the diabolical sense ability, which allows them advantage on perception checks made to perceive good aligned creatures. Is it really a diabolical sense? Next, Narzugons have an Infernal Tack. While technically a magic item that only evil creatures can attune to, a Narzugon can use the spurs on its Infernal Tack to summon a nightmare for it to ride around on. If you quickly search Narzugons on the internet, you can see that they are literally inseparable from their nightmare steed. It's exhausting because it would be nice to see the devil by itself. Whatever. Crush my dreams, why don't you? Last, Narzugons have magic resistance. If you're a caster, you just internally groaned because, yep, a Narzugon has advantage on all saving throws against any spells or magical effects. You and your pathetic magic. Narzugons have a triple multi-attack with their Hellfire Lance, with a fourth option that adds a little fun to the encounter. Each melee attack has a range of 10 feet and deals an average of 11 piercing damage and 16 fire damage. 81 damage per round is on the low end of a challenge level 13 creature's expected damage, but the fact that the damage is in the expected range means the Narzugon will pack a punch. If a creature dies from Hellfire Lance damage, its soul is condemned to the Nine Hells, where it rises as a Lemuri from the river Styx after approximately 2 hours. If the creature isn't brought back to life before then, it can only be restored with a wish spell or if the Lemuri is killed and true resurrection is cast on the original body. And trust me, given the number of Lemuris in the Nine Hells, wish is a much better choice. Additionally, Narzugons can take one of two additional actions as a part of their multi-attack: Infernal Command or Terrifying Command. With Infernal Command, a Narzugon bolsters its allies' resolve and makes them immune to charm or fear effects until the start of its next turn. Terrifying Command is just that. Any creature that is not a fiend and within 60 feet of the Narzugon must succeed on a charisma saving throw or be frightened for 1 minute. Affected creatures may attempt an additional saving throw at the end of each of its turns, and any creatures successful in their saving throws are immune to this individual Narzugon's Terrifying Command for 24 hours. Well, then I hope the Narzugon has only chosen fiends for its entourage, because this will quickly get messy. Last, Narzugons have the healing action. While this may only be used once per day, the Narzugon can touch a creature and cause it to regain 100 hit points. Don't celebrate your victory too early. Narzugons are created from your everyday paladins. Alignment doesn't really matter because Narzugons represent a descent into madness. Sometimes serving a deity just doesn't grant enough righteous power, and a paladin makes a deal with an archdevil. Upon the paladin's death, their soul is transformed into a Narzugon, which carries the same sense of honor and service, but to the archdevil who granted them power. Narzugons are found on every layer of the Nine Hells, but are typically confined to fortresses or palaces on each layer. In battle, Narzugons are difficult to kill as they can quickly escape into the ethereal plane after a successful charge. Imagine a solid line of murderous paladin has-beens charging towards you. I think I have urgent business on the other side of the multiverse. Narzugons overall are written reasonably well. I have some grievances, but I acknowledge they're petty. First, their armor is stupid. Putting spikes on armor is a great way to guide your opponent's weapon to a well point in the metal and potentially shear a hole in your expensive gear. Which brings me to my next point. Narzugons only have an armor class of 20 because of their shield. Just give them a magical +2 plate armor and solve 2 problems at once. The spikes are magical, so they aren't weak points, and the Narzugon doesn't have to sacrifice its armor to wield its lance when off its nightmare. Also, Narzugons have been nerfed. In 3rd edition, Narzugons used to cast both at-will spells and a variety of once-a-day spells. In addition, Narzugons could summon other devils to aid them in combat, or take off their helmet and cast the Phantasmal Killer spell on any who took a look at that mess of a face. Sorry, buddy, should have negotiated a better skin job in your contract. The last thing that annoys me is the name of the Narzugon and the name of the archdevil they serve is branded into the Hellfire Lance. But look, are you willing to pick up a lance that is going to continually hurt you with fire damage and risk getting turned into a Lemuri? 3rd and 4th edition Hellfire Lances don't appear to be continually on fire, but 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons appears to be forging its own path, so to speak. Picking up a burning lance seems like a really stupid idea, but I've been surprised before. Give the lance to Butticus. Butticus cannot read Inferno. DMs! Narzugons are group encounter-based creatures, as indicated by Infernal Command, but make the Narzugons accompanying allies fiends. That's the only restriction I'd put on building the encounter. It's also unlikely that your player's characters will encounter a Narzugon if they aren't messing with some seriously powerful denizens of the Nine Hells. With an intelligence score of 16, 60% above average, Narzugons are incredibly incredibly intelligent compared to some of the creatures I've featured here. Narzugons can form complex battle plans and adjust to changing scenarios at a moment's notice. They are also capable of directing their followers to counter a difficult opponent, i.e. one of your player's characters just won't f***ing die. When you start combat, have the Narzugon use Terrifying Command and catch as many player characters in the 60-foot radius as possible. Realistically, you should catch all of them, and the DC 17 Charisma saving throw is difficult for anyone who isn't a Paladin, Warlock, or Bard. Or if you feel like a more f***erous approach, have the Narzugon hit half your players with Terrifying Command, wait for the effects to wear off, then hit the other remaining player characters. The only caveat is Paladins at level 10 gain Aura of Courage, which prevents them and any allies within 10 feet from being frightened. Being Paladins themselves, Narzugons can immediately recognize enemy Paladins and won't waste their Terrifying Command. So if your players decide to group their characters to thwart you, how do you make them separate? Scroll of Fireball. Fireball solves all problems always. Mounted combat rules indicate that the Nightmare acts on the Narzugon's turn, as it is considered fully trained. The Nightmare cannot attack while acting on the Narzugon's initiative, but it can take the dash, dodge, or disengage action. And that's horrifying. Assuming you have the Nightmare use the dash action, a Narzugon can now hit a target up to 190 feet away in any direction and 205 feet on a horizontal plane. Though I wouldn't make the Narzugon dismount if you can help it, lances require 2 hands when off of a mount, and the Narzugon would have to ditch its shield in order to attack. With their resistances and immunities to common forms of damage, Narzugons effectively have 224 hit points. With their armor class of 20, Narzugons aren't afraid of opportunity attacks so long as the attacks don't target their Nightmare. Don't ever sacrifice the Narzugon's Nightmare unless you're trading a significant number of player character deaths or downs for it. Also, a Nightmare bound by Infernal Tack can't technically be killed. It reforms in the 9 hells after 24 hours have elapsed, but a Nightmare's death cripples the Narzugon's mobility and escape plan. When fighting against your player's characters, have the Nightmare regularly take the dodge or disengage action, making it exceptionally difficult to hit while the Narzugon rockets around the battlefield. Your Narzugon should always attack the player character able to deal more than 10 to 15% of the Narzugon's hit points in damage in a single turn, especially if the damage is magical. Because of the Hellfire Lance's ability to convert souls into Lemuries, a Narzugon always kills their intended target before switching to the next one. You can have mercy on your player's downed characters if you choose, but please bear in mind a creature's challenge level is calculated by it trying to murder a party adventurers, not have them over for tea. Now, one decision you'll have to make is whether or not it costs the Narzugon an action to command the Nightmare to use its Ethereal Stride action. Though remember, Ethereal Stride can only be used on the material plane. A Narzugon can only permanently die in the 9 hells and fights most carefully there. Anywhere else? It. Creatures who know they can't be killed fight the craziest. But the Narzugon is also aware it loses its Infernal Tack if it dies or is defeated. If defeat looms, retreat is absolutely an option. Last thing before I tell your players how to beat you, when and on who should a Narzugon use its healing ability? 100 hit points is a fantastic recovery and can really demoralize your players if they think they're close to finishing off a bloodied enemy. Obviously, you shouldn't squander this ability on a creature that has fewer than 100 total hit points. I personally would reserve this for either the Narzugon or for a superior devil. Because of the Infernal Hierarchy, the Narzugon technically serves all devils above its rank and would very likely sacrifice itself to ensure the well-being of a superior. Players! Chances are you're in for a rough fight. A Narzugon's mobility is out of this world. If you're fighting a Narzugon, there are several things you can do to turn the tide in your favor. First, the Narzugon has disadvantage to attack targets within 5 feet because while lances are melee weapons, they're not melee weapons. Second, if you deal a lot of damage to the Narzugon's Nightmare, it's a 95% chance that the Narzugon will have the Nightmare retreat to safety and temporarily cripple its own mobility. An attack range of 40 feet per round is significantly more manageable than 190 feet, right? If you have a Paladin in your group, you can temporarily delay having to make the saving throw against Terrifying Command. Even if your DM uses a Scroll of Fireball to try to split you apart, a level 10 Paladin should also have Aura of Protection out to 10 feet, which allows you to add the Paladin's Charisma modifier to your Dexterity saving throw. Unless your group's Paladin is a joke character, at level 13 you're looking at a +3 or +4 bonus. With all their saving throws in the positive range, you can see there's a couple weaknesses, intelligence and wisdom. And yeah, if a Narzugon was smart or wise, they wouldn't be a f***ing Narzugon, now would they? Bear in mind that a Nightmare is extremely susceptible to charms and most spells. Charm the Nightmare and throw the Narzugon to the ground. Then give your DM shit about not having the appropriate token. Sure, the Narzugon will dismiss the Nightmare as an action and resummon it if the spell lasts longer than, say, Suggestion, but any port in a storm. If you're a martial melee fighter, I recommend peeling the Narzugon or any creatures bent on killing your casters or healer. If you're not familiar with peeling, it typically involves inflicting a slow, stun, or other move on an enemy to prevent them from using melee attacks to destroy your squishy friends. Even if commanded to attack a target, most creatures will switch targets if something or someone hits them for 15% or more of their total health in a single turn. At that point, it's just basic survival instincts. I wish I could provide some helpful advice as far as what your DM is going to throw at you, but there's basically an unlimited number of ways the encounter can be structured. You can safely assume fiends will show up. A Narzugon can't control demons, so you're up against devils. Hopefully you have spells that deal damage other than fire or poison. Circle of Death is a very expensive fireball substitute, but can quickly take a chunk out of most fiends. There are, of course, a variety of different approaches you can take that don't involve sacrificing a 6th level spell slot for slightly mediocre damage. Be creative and have fun, but don't die. You don't want your soul to serve the 9 hells in the Blood War, do you? Nah, I thought not. Anyways, what do you all think of Narzugons? Let me know in the comments below. A special thank you to my patrons. And thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, share my video on your Twitter, Facebook, or other social media, and make the leap to become one of my patrons on Patreon. I'll see you all next time.